Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at biodiversity.
All right.
We'll be using excerpts from a biology textbook chapter on
Oh, cool.
biodiversity and conservation.
Nice.
And, we always talk about saving endangered species and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this chapter really gets into, how much variety of life there is.
Right.
Just the sheer numbers are kind of mind-boggling.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And get this, even scientists can't agree on exactly how many different species there are.
Yeah, that's one of those questions that's simpler to ask than to answer.
Oh, for sure.
Most of us listening probably have a pretty good idea of what we mean when we say biodiversity.
Right.
But this textbook highlights how it's way more than just a head count of all the different animals and plants.
Yeah, I kind of took it for granted.
Yeah.
When I think about it, right?
Yeah.
You see a forest and you think, okay, there's a bunch of trees, some birds, maybe a deer if you're lucky.
Right.
But there's so much more going on.
Oh, yeah.
Beneath the surface.
Absolutely. The textbook talks about this idea of biodiversity on multiple levels.
Okay.
It's not just about counting different species. It's about understanding the variation within each species.
Right.
At the genetic level.
Okay.
Wow. Did you know that different populations of the same plant can have wildly different levels of medicinal potency?
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it uses the example of Rauwolfia vomitoria,
Okay.
which is a plant found in the Himalayas.
Okay.
And so if you're a traditional healer relying on this plant, you need to know which population has the highest concentration of the active chemical.
Oh, wow.
It's literally a matter of life or death.
That makes total sense. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So we've got genetic diversity making each species unique.
Right.
Then, of course, there's species diversity.
Right.
All the different kinds of plants and animals in a given area.
Yeah, and then what's fascinating is how that diversity is distributed.
Yeah.
You won't find the same species everywhere.
Right.
It uses the example of the Western Ghats in India.
Okay.
Which has way more amphibian species compared to the Eastern Ghats.
So it's different regions have their own cast of creatures.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then zoom out even further,
Yeah.
you've got ecological diversity,
Right.
which is the variety of ecosystems themselves.
Yeah.
Think about India, right? You've got everything from scorching deserts to lush rainforests.
Yeah, huge variety.
Yeah, which is a big difference from say Norway,
Right.
which has a much more limited range of ecosystems.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these different levels of biodiversity kind of fit together.
Yeah.
But let's get back to that question about how many species are actually out there.
Okay.
So the textbook mentioned that IUCN has recorded about 1.5 million species.
Yeah.
So far.
So far, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. And what's really interesting is the breakdown.
Okay.
Over 70% of those recorded species are animals.
Wow.
And insects make up a whopping 70% of that number.
Whoa. So insects are really running the show.
Yeah.
I would have guessed plants would be the biggest group.
It's a common misconception.
Yeah.
Plants actually make up less than 22% of recorded species.
Oh.
But here's where it gets really mind-blowing.
Okay.
Some scientists estimate the total number of species on Earth could be as high as 7 million.
7 million. That's insane.
Yeah.
How can they even begin to guess at that number?
Well, it's a huge scientific challenge.
Yeah.
Think about it. Vast areas of the ocean are unexplored.
Right.
Countless species are microscopic or live in hard to reach places.
Yeah, you don't just bump into them walking down the street.
No, you don't. And plus, new species are being discovered all the time.
That's true.
Yeah, so
I guess it's kind of like trying to count all the stars in the sky.
it is.
But this vastness is also what makes it so exciting, right? There's so much we still don't know
Absolutely.
on life on Earth.
Yeah, and this brings us to another fascinating aspect,
Okay.
which is the uneven distribution of biodiversity.
Okay.
It's not like every corner of the planet is equally diverse.
Right.
There are patterns.
Yeah.
And one of the most well-known is called the latitudinal gradient.
Yeah, I've always been amazed by how much more biodiversity there seems to be. The closer you get to the equator.
Yeah.
Is there a scientific explanation for that?
There is.
Okay.
So species diversity generally decreases as you move away from the equator towards the poles.
Okay.
The tropics are biodiversity hotspots.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, it gives a great example.
Okay.
Colombia, near the equator, has almost 1,400 bird species,
Wow.
while New York, at a higher latitude, has only about 100.
Yeah.
And Greenland, even further north, has a mere 56.
That's a huge difference.
That's a huge difference.
So what makes the tropics so special?
Well, for one, they've had a longer evolutionary history.
Yep.
They haven't been subject to the same kind of dramatic climate shifts that higher latitudes have experienced, like ice ages.
Yeah.
So this means life in the tropics has had more time to diversify and evolve.
Like they had a head start.
Yeah, they had a head start in the evolutionary race.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So it's like a combination of time and stability
exactly.
that's created these incredible hotspots of biodiversity.
Right. And then there's also the amount of solar energy.
Okay.
So the tropics receive more direct sunlight,
Yeah.
which fuels plant growth, and that energy ripples up through the food web,
Right.
supporting a greater abundance and diversity of life.
Yeah, it's like an engine of biodiversity
It is
powered by the sun.
powered by the sun.
Okay, I'm starting to get a picture of how geography and
Yeah.
climate play a huge role
Yep,
in shaping these biodiversity patterns.
for sure.
But even within a specific region, there's another fascinating concept at play.
Yeah.
The species-area relationship.
Yeah, this stems from observations made by Alexander von Humboldt way back in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
While exploring the jungles of South America, he noticed that the number of species he encountered tended to increase with the area that he explored.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
The more ground you cover, the more types of habitats and microenvironments you're likely to find.
Exactly.
Okay, so bigger area, more species?
It's not quite that simple.
Oh,
There's a logarithmic equation involved,
okay.
meaning the relationship isn't linear.
Right.
To put it into perspective, if you double the area of a rainforest, you might only see like a 10% increase in new species.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the amount of space, but also about how that space is utilized
Right.
and the variety of niches within it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And this species-area relationship isn't just limited to rainforests.
Okay.
It's been observed in a wide variety of ecosystems, from islands to mountain ranges to coral reefs.
So it's like a fundamental pattern.
It is
Yeah.
of biodiversity.
So we've gone from the genetic level of biodiversity within a species
Yeah.
to understanding how it's spread across the globe
Right.
and the factors that influence these patterns.
Yeah.
But now I kind of want to get to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
Why should we care about all this?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
we're bombarded with information about the decline of biodiversity,
Yeah, we are.
but it can be hard to grasp what that truly means for us.
Right.
This textbook doesn't shy away from the harsh realities,
Good.
but it also frames it in a way that makes you understand just how much is at stake.
Well, I'm all ears. Let's dive into why biodiversity matters.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's easy to think of biodiversity as like something out there, something we can just admire from afar.
Right.
But this textbook really drives home the point that it's like intricately linked to our own well-being.
Yeah, it's not just about saving the cute animals for future generations.
Right.
It's about saving, like, the systems that make life possible on this planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The textbook uses this analogy
Oh.
called the rivet popper hypothesis.
Oh.
So imagine an airplane
Right.
where each rivet represents a different species
Okay.
in an ecosystem.
Okay.
Now picture someone popping out rivets one by one.
Uh-oh.
At first you might not notice a difference,
Right.
but eventually the plane becomes dangerously unstable.
So, like, losing even seemingly insignificant species can weaken the entire ecosystem?
Exactly. And we depend on these ecosystems for everything.
Right.
Clean air and water, food production, climate regulation, even medicines.
Wow.
These are all services provided by diverse, healthy ecosystems.
It's like we're constantly benefiting from this intricate web of life
We are.
without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Okay, that analogy really brings it home. It's
Yeah.
like we're taking these ecosystem services for granted,
Right.
not realizing they depend on this, like, delicate balance
Yeah.
that's being disrupted.
Yeah. And the textbook does not hold back. On the alarming rate of biodiversity loss,
Okay.
it says we're losing species 100 to 1,000 times faster
Yeah,
than before humans came along.
that's a lot.
It's a sobering statistic,
Yeah.
and it's directly tied to our impact on the planet.
Okay.
So the textbook highlights what it calls the evil quartet
Oh, wow.
of causes.
Okay.
So habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species, invasions, and co-extinctions.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's unpack those, starting with habitat loss.
Okay.
I mean, it seems pretty obvious if we destroy a natural habitat, the species that live there will disappear.
Right. It's the biggest driver of extinction,
Yeah.
and it's happening on a massive scale.
Yeah.
Like, think about the Amazon rainforest,
Right.
which is being cleared for agriculture at an alarming rate. Countless species are losing their homes as a result.
It's heartbreaking to think about.
It is.
But it's not just about outright destruction, right?
Yeah.
The textbook also mentioned habitat fragmentation.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so even if some habitat remains,
Okay.
it's often broken up into smaller isolated patches.
Okay.
So imagine like a large mammal
Okay.
that needs to roam vast distances to find food and mates.
Right.
Suddenly, their territory is sliced up by roads or fences,
Yeah.
and they're trapped.
Okay.
It's a death sentence for many species.
It's like we're slowly suffocating them by restricting their space.
Yeah,
And then there's overexploitation,
right.
which is basically taking too much from nature.
Yeah,
I remember learning about the passenger pigeon in school.
yeah.
They were so abundant that flocks would like darken the sky,
Right.
but overhunting drove them to extinction.
Yeah, it's a classic example of
Yeah.
how human greed can wipe out an entire species.
Oh.
And we're seeing similar patterns today
Oh, really?
with overfishing.
Okay.
Some fish populations are being pushed to the brink of collapse.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, and it's not just about losing that species.
Right.
It's about disrupting the entire food web. Yeah, and impacting the livelihoods of people who depend on those fish.
It's a reminder that our actions have like ripple effects
They do.
throughout the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And speaking of disruption, let's talk about alien species invasions.
Okay.
I'm always amazed by how some species can thrive in new environments.
Yeah.
Even to the detriment of native species.
Right. It can be an ecological disaster.
Yeah.
When a non-native species is introduced, it can outcompete native species for resources,
Right.
disrupt food chains,
Yeah.
and even alter entire ecosystems.
Wow.
Like it gives this example of the Nile perch,
Okay.
which was introduced into Lake Victoria in Africa.
I've heard about this. Didn't it cause a mass extinction
It did.
of native fish?
Yeah, the Nile perch, being a voracious predator, decimated over 200 species of sixlid fish,
Wow.
which is a unique and diverse group found only in Lake Victoria.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a stark example of how introducing a single species
Right.
can have a catastrophic cascade effect.
Wow, that's chilling. We see this happening with invasive plant species as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I know we have a problem with kudzu here in the U.S.
Yeah.
It seems like it can grow anywhere and choke out everything in its path.
It's a classic example.
Yeah.
Invasive plants can completely transform landscapes.
Wow.
They can alter ecosystem processes.
Totally.
They can affect soil chemistry and water availability.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It seems like these invasions are happening more frequently now
Yeah,
with increased global travel and trade.
absolutely. It's a major challenge.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of biosecurity measures.
Right.
And being cautious about introducing species to new environments.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we've got habitat loss over exploitation and alien species invasions.
Right.
All pretty grim stuff.
Yeah.
But the final member of this evil quartet is co-extinction.
Right.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So co-extinction is particularly poignant because it highlights the interconnectedness of life. So essentially, when one species goes extinct, it can trigger a chain reaction,
Okay.
leading to the extinction of other species that depend on it.
Okay.
So imagine a specialized pollinator
Okay.
that relies on a specific plant species.
Right.
If that plant disappears, the pollinator is doomed as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like a domino effect
It is.
of extinction.
Yeah.
One loss triggers another and another
Right.
until whole ecosystems unravel.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder that everything is connected.
Yeah.
And protecting biodiversity means protecting the intricate web of relationships that sustains life.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground exploring the dark side of biodiversity loss.
We have.
But I'm hoping there's some light at the end of this tunnel.
Okay.
The textbook does mention conservation efforts.
It does.
So let's shift gears and dive into what's being done to protect biodiversity.
Okay, so there's definitely hope.
Yeah.
While the challenges are daunting,
Right.
there are people all over the world dedicated to protecting biodiversity. And there are strategies that have proven to be effective.
Awesome.
So the textbook differentiates between in situ and ex situ conservation.
Okay, I remember those terms from my biology classes.
Right.
In situ means conserving species in their natural habitats.
Exactly. It's about protecting entire ecosystems.
Okay.
Recognizing that we can't just isolate individual species.
Yeah.
One of the most effective in situ conservation strategies is establishing protected areas,
Okay.
like national parks,
Right.
wildlife sanctuaries, and biosphere reserves.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of national parks.
Yeah.
They're not just great for recreation.
Right.
They also play a vital role in protecting biodiversity.
These protected areas act as safe havens for species,
Okay.
allowing them to thrive with minimal human interference.
Right.
And they often have ripple effects,
Really?
benefiting surrounding areas as well.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
It's like creating islands of hope
it is.
amidst the sea of human development.
Yeah. What about ex situ conservation?
Isn't that about protecting species outside of their natural habitat?
Yes. Think the zoo's botanical gardens, seed banks.
Okay.
And even those high-tech facilities where they're cryopreserving genetic material for future use.
So it's like a backup plan
It is.
for biodiversity,
Yeah.
reserving species and genetic diversity in case they disappear from the wild.
Exactly. Ex situ conservation is crucial for critically endangered species.
Okay.
It allows us to breed them in captivity,
Right.
conduct research, and raise awareness
Yeah.
about the importance of biodiversity.
It's like a lifeline
It is.
for species on the brink.
Yeah.
The textbook also mentions something called biodiversity hotspots.
Yeah.
What are those exactly?
Okay, so biodiversity hotspots are like the crown jewels of biodiversity.
Okay.
They're regions with exceptionally high species richness
Okay.
and a lot of endemic species.
Endemic species.
Yeah, those found nowhere else on Earth.
So they're like biodiversity super concentrates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah.
India is home to 3 of these biodiversity hotspots.
Wow, really?
Yeah, the Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma, and the Himalayas.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
These hotspots are incredibly valuable,
Yeah.
and protecting them is crucial for global biodiversity conservation.
This brings me to something I found really fascinating in the textbook,
Okay.
the concept of sacred groves.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me more about those?
Yeah, so sacred groves are a great example of how cultural practices can play a role in conservation.
Okay.
They're basically forests
Okay.
that are set aside and protected for religious or spiritual reasons.
So it's like a cultural embrace
It is.
of conservation. I love that.
Yeah. So the trees and wildlife within these groves are considered sacred
Okay.
and are often off limits for any kind of exploitation.
And the textbook mentioned that these sacred groves often serve as refuges for rare species,
They do.
especially in areas where surrounding forests have been degraded or destroyed.
Exactly. They're like little pockets of resilience amidst human-dominated landscapes.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we can learn a lot from traditional knowledge and practices
Right.
when it comes to conservation.
So we've got in situ conservation protecting ecosystems.
Right.
Ex situ conservation providing a safety net
Yes.
and a focus on biodiversity hotspots, the most critical areas.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of effort going into safeguarding biodiversity,
There is.
but it also feels like a constant uphill battle.
It is. The pressure on natural ecosystems keeps increasing,
Right.
but the awareness of biodiversity's importance is growing too.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember that we all have a part to play.
That's a great point. It's easy to feel overwhelmed
Right.
by the scale of the problem
Yeah.
and think that individual actions don't matter.
Yeah.
But this textbook emphasizes that every species, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, has intrinsic value.
Yeah, it's like that saying, everything is connected. And that really resonated with me throughout this chapter.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept.
It is. And it's really at the heart of biodiversity conservation.
Right.
It's not just about saving individual species, it's about understanding that complex web of life
Yeah.
and our place within it.
And recognizing that we have a moral responsibility to care for this planet and all its inhabitants.
Yes.
It's not just about us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've talked about the big picture, the global efforts to
Yeah.
conserve biodiversity. But what struck me was the textbook's emphasis on individual action.
Okay.
It might seem like our small choices don't make a difference,
Yeah.
but collectively they absolutely do.
It's easy to feel powerless in the face of such a huge issue.
Yeah.
But this chapter reminded me that we can all make choices that support biodiversity,
Yeah.
starting with our own backyard.
Exactly. Think about it. Planting native flowers that attract pollinators,
Right.
reducing pesticide use,
Yeah.
composting food waste instead of sending it to a landfill,
Right.
being mindful of our water consumption.
Yeah.
These small actions can create ripple effects.
And then there are the bigger choices.
Right.
Supporting sustainable businesses.
Yeah.
Reducing our meat consumption.
Right.
Being conscious consumers.
It's about shifting our mindset from one of consumption to one of stewardship.
Right.
Recognizing that we're caretakers of this planet, not just users of its resources.
Yeah, and this deep dive has really made me appreciate the intricate beauty and complexity of biodiversity.
Yeah.
It's not just about preserving species for future generations.
Right.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all life and the profound impact it has on our own well-being.
I think that's a really powerful takeaway.
Yeah.
We often talk about saving endangered species.
Yeah, we do.
But this chapter helped me understand that it's about so much more than that.
It is.
It's about protecting the very fabric of life on Earth.
It's about recognizing that we're a part of nature,
Yeah.
not separate from it.
And that realization can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah, it is.
We have a choice.
We do.
And the choices we make today will determine the future of biodiversity.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through the world of biodiversity.
Right.
I know I'll never look at a forest the same way again.
Me neither. It's amazing to think about the sheer variety of life out there,
Yeah.
the interconnectedness of it all, and the responsibility we have to protect it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Ah,
I want to leave you with a question.
okay.
Knowing what we know now about the importance of biodiversity,
Hmm.
what small step can you take
Right.
to appreciate and help conserve the incredible variety of life around you?
It's something to ponder as you go about your day, your week, your
Right.
life,
Yeah.
because even the smallest actions can make a difference.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of biodiversity. Until next time, keep diving